I literally dedicated my career to fighting climate change 16 years ago, and now I'm questioning, is this even real? Is this whole situation that we've been told real? And like the thing that and like this is a scientific fact. We've known since the 1890s that carbon dioxide reflects infrared radiation back at the Earth. So like the sun shines on the Earth, heats up the Earth, and then that heat comes back and it gets trapped by carbon dioxide and water vapor and other greenhouse gases. And if it wasn't for that, the Earth would literally be a ball of ice floating through space, right? Here's the thing. There's only certain frequencies, and I just realized this lately, there's only certain frequencies that carbon dioxide will reflect. The atmosphere, the CO2 level, it's catching certain frequencies and reflecting those back, but there's only a certain band of frequencies that CO2 is able to reflect. And I recently watched this like presentation of this physics professor explaining that. And he had another chart where he showed that, and I mean, I would love to see the scientific rebuttal to this. And I actually posted this in a Facebook group of Canadians concerned about climate change last night. I was like, please, somebody show me the scientific rebuttal to this, because it makes total sense to me. I've dedicated my career to this. Like, I'm LEED accredited, Passive House trained. I'm a certified energy auditor. I've spent so much time and money and energy learning about these things, and I literally do this for a living. But I want to see, is this true? And what he's saying is like, we are basically at the threshold now of the maximum amount of infrared heat that we're going to reflect back at the Earth. If we doubled it from 400 parts per million to 800 parts per million, which is like we're at 400 parts per million, before we started burning coal, oil, and natural gas, we were at about 200 to 250 parts per million, and now we're at 400. And most of that, by the way, has been absorbed by the ocean and made the ocean more acidic, which is bad. But apparently the ocean now is at its most acidic that it can get without the temperature of the Earth changing significantly. So anyways, that was a buffer. But anyway, what I'm saying is, if they doubled the amount of carbon dioxide in the atmosphere, it's probably not going to reflect much more heat towards us. And it makes the plants happier, which will automatically balance itself out anyway. And that makes total scientific sense to me. I'd love to hear the scientific rebuttal to that. I've thought about one scientific rebuttal. Let's not get into it because it's kind of complicated, but yeah. And the other thing that gets me is you can see all these planes spraying the sky and making clouds out of thin air. And I watched a video last week of this guy saying there's like 6 states in the United States that are banning geoengineering. And I've seen patents for these geoengineering devices where they're changing the weather. And there's treaties between nations where you can do these experiments on the weather. So my question is, what is real in terms of climate data if they've been doing this for decades? Like, for real. It's a serious concern.
Yeah, the whole climate change thing is it's just littered with bad data. And by the way, it's not just the U.S. states. I believe Mexico completely banned spraying of chemicals in the atmosphere.
That's wonderful. We need to do that everywhere, because who knows what that's doing to our health. The other thing I wanted to say is taxing people to poverty is not going to solve climate change. The real solutions, if CO2 is really the most, like, we can't change what the sun does. I think it's mostly the sun that's doing its thing. But we can't change what the sun does, but we can change what we put into the atmosphere. And I do believe we need to get away from fossil fuels. They've made us very wealthy. They've made our lives great. They make most of the stuff that we use for our, like our everything plastic. is made of fossil fuel, why are we burning it? Why are we taking this very valuable thing and then saying, hey, let's just burn that sucker? Put it into the atmosphere. Like, that's stupid. There's so much of it that's probably one of the reasons, but I think ultimately the reason we need to get off of fossil fuel is because it's a form of slavery. We're completely screwed without it. We can't do anything currently. And I just held up my phone, but I literally have an ebook on there that's like 2,500 pages of buried patents of free energy devices. There's a video on Rumble. It used to be on YouTube. They took it down because YouTube likes to censor things now, the truth. But it was a documentary called It Runs on Water. There was a guy named Stanley Mayer in the 90s who had created vehicles where he would put water into a tube and then vibrate that water. I think it was like at 20 or 30,000 hertz. And it would just basically break up the molecules and make it so that you had hydrogen and oxygen. And then he would just simply recombine them in an engine, and the output is water. And he tried to sell this and stuff. They offered him a lot of money to just shelve this whole thing, and he ended up with food poisoning. And apparently his last words were, they poisoned me. So, and even when I was a kid, my next door neighbor was my age, but his dad was a mechanic. And he had invented this like rotary engine where he had placed magnets kind of across from each other, and this thing would just start spinning and spinning and spinning, but it would just fly apart eventually because he couldn't get it perfectly balanced. But he patented this thing and apparently sold it for quite a bit of money. But have you ever seen anything like that out on Amazon? No. That's intentional. And there's lots of other devices like that. Like, energy is literally everywhere.